the meeting to order. Councilmember Scott Barr will be offering the Pledge of Allegiance to get us started.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Good evening, Livonia. Welcome to the 1936th regular meeting of the Livonia City Council. This is a voting meeting. Minutes of this meeting will be approved at the next regular meeting scheduled for Monday, January 31st, 2022. Ms. Nash, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Barr.
Here.
Councilmember Donovic.
Here.
Councilmember Morgan.
Here.
Councilmember McCullough.
Here.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Here.
President Jolly.
Present. So you may notice that Vice President Toy is not with us tonight. She hasn't been with us for the last couple meetings. She regrets that she's not able to be here. She is well, she's physically well, but under the advice of her doctor, she is refraining from going out in public to settings such as this because of certain health susceptibility to the virus. So she sends her best. She is well, and her thoughts are with us, and I presume that she's watching us tonight as well. So with that, I will ask for a motion for the minutes of the 1935th regular meeting of the City Council that was held on December 13th of 2021.
So move.
Support.
I will ask Ms. Nash to take the vote.
Councilmember Barr.
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic.
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. So the minutes are approved. At this time, we will open up a 30-minute window for audience communication. Audience communication should be limited to items that are not on the regular agenda tonight. If your item is on the regular agenda tonight, please refrain from speaking at this point and approach the podium when the time is right. Do we have any audience communication? Okay, seeing none, I will introduce the department heads who are with us. Mr. Bernier, our city attorney, Ms. LaShawn Thomas, the Director of Governmental Affairs, Ms. Nash, the city clerk, Mr. Todd Zielinczyk, the city engineer, Mr. Mark Toromina, the Director of Economic Development and Planning, and Ms. Sarah Kasprowitz, the manager of the City Council office. We also have with us in the audience Mayor Maureen Miller-Brosnan, Treasurer Linda Scheel, and some other department heads who will announce themselves as they approach the podium. With that, I'll go to council announcements. I'll start off by wishing a happy birthday to our esteemed Chief Assistant City Attorney, Mike Fisher, who is celebrating his birthday on January 23rd. I'll note that we have new data on items 8 and 9, and that we will be holding committee meetings on January 26th and 3 public hearings on February 2nd. Those public hearings will be in regards to rezoning requests made by Schoolcraft College. With that being said, we'll go to the council announcements, and we'll start with Ms. McIntyre to announce the retirees.
Thank you. I have 2 retirees to announce for the month of December. Susan Samposky, an account clerk 2 with DPW, who retired after 19 years of service, and Curtis Cade, our police chief, who retired after 42 years of service.
Thank you. Any other announcements from the council? Ms. McIntyre?
On January 11th of this year, the city lost a remarkable woman, Alice Hosbeck. Alice, when she passed away on the 11th of January, was 2 days shy of her 102nd birthday, and many of us fondly remember the celebration for her 100th birthday 2 years ago at Silver Village, and there was an outdoor celebration yesterday. Alice spent most of her life in Livonia and grew up with her twin sister Jeannie on a farm that was located at 5 Mile and Middle Belt. And Alice worked for the Northville Public Schools, the Livonia Public Schools, was an avid ballroom dancer, an avid reader, and a wonderful storyteller. She was a longtime figure at the senior center. She volunteered there, she helped out there, she attended all of the parties there, and she was just a remarkable woman, not only because she had achieved almost 102 years of age, but her attitude. She truly loved life, had a spark in her eye up until the very end. But if we could just maybe take a moment of silence, and any of you who knew Alice, maybe just take a moment to remember her and the many contributions she made to our city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim.
Mr. Donovic?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two items I'd like to briefly talk about. One is we recently had the anniversary of two police officers that have passed away in the city of Livonia. Officers Irvin Johnson and Officer Larry Niehazel, both of which passed away in the month of January. So I'd like to keep both of them in my prayers and hopefully in your prayers as well. Also, I'd like to refer an item to the Finance Committee for the purchasing policy finance order requiring 3 bids for purchases that are $1,500 or greater.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilman McCullough. Currently, for example, if a purchaser in DPW needs to purchase a tool or a part that exceeds $1,500, they have to put together a purchasing order and go out to bid, getting at least 3 bids, which greatly decreases the efficiency of that department and makes it unreasonable sometimes in today's economic markets to go out and seek multiple bids, and it can take weeks, if not months, depending on what the part is and going through the process. Talking to some other communities and people in different departments, it seems like that number usually is in the $2,500 to $5,000 mark, with goods increasing, trying to be efficient in departments. One tool nowadays can cost $1,500 with just a few accessories and shipping. So I wanted to look at that policy and refer it to the Finance Committee and have some good discussions about revisiting that. The last time it was touched on was 2001, I believe, and I think we all know the economy has changed greatly since then. Thank you to my colleagues for the support.
Do we have any comments in regards to the motion from the council? Seeing none, any comments from the audience in regards to Mr. Donovic's motion? I see none. Ms. Nash, please take the roll, or call the item.
Councilmember Barr?
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic?
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan?
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough?
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Aye.
President Jolly?
Aye. The motion passes. That will be set for the Finance Committee. Mr. Donovic, did you have anything else?
No, that's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to also offer a resolution to refer the subject matter of the road millage renewal to committee of a whole.
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovic?
second that motion.
Okay. Would you like to explain?
This is obviously something that is on the horizon, and it's early enough in the year that it's prudent to get this before our committee.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Any audience communication? Seeing none. Ms. Nash, will you take the vote?
Councilmember Barr?
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic?
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan?
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough?
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Aye.
President Jolly?
Aye. Any other announcements from the council? Mr. McCullough?
I promise I have 10 more, but I'll go quick. I would also like to offer a resolution to move the subject matter of the Bell Creek erosion and the funding provided by the state into the Capital Outlay and Infrastructure Committee.
Do we have a second?
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovic?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any further explanation, Mr. McCullough?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Donovic. This had Representative Palhutsky, I believe, last year, late in the year, was able to secure around $1 million for the erosion in many areas that surround Bell Creek in the city. It was kind of vaguely touched on, and I know obviously going into the new year, this is something that I'd like to just learn a little bit more on what the plan is from administration to tackle some of these. A lot of people that live on Bell Creek, some of the properties are literally falling into the creek, and so this was a great incentive from the state, and I just want to make sure we've got our finger on the pulse. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Any comments from the council? Any audience communication in regards to that matter? Seeing none, Ms. Nash, please take the vote.
Councilmember Barr?
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic?
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan?
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough?
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye, the motion passes. We will see that come before the council in the near future. In terms of receive and files to the council, we have 3 separate tax rate requests. One from the Wayne County Zoological Authority for the year 2021, one from the Wayne County Art Institute Authority for year 2021, and another from the Huron-Clinton Metropolitan Authority for the year 2021. Each of these is a request that's received by the city so that these items can be put on the ballot. The council takes no votes on these matters, so they are just a receive and file. We also have the mayor with us tonight, who will be presenting the annual report for fiscal year 2020-2021, which reflects the finances and administrative activities of the city.
Good evening,
Mayor.
council, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. President, I'm happy to share with you tonight the annual report for 2021. This is available to the entire city now at this point on the city's website, and there's an electronic format that it's been placed in. This is the second year in a row now that we've provided the report in this format. Back in 2019, many of you may recall, this report had been provided to the city in a 140-page Microsoft Word document. The nature of the document has changed considerably over the past 2 years, with a real focus and intent on providing a data-driven report. Year after year, as we begin to accumulate more data in the format that we have, our hope is that we're able to provide more comparative data. We think that's what actually helps us to drive change, to drive improvement in our community. So it's an exciting report. It's easy to follow. It's available, like I said, to everybody on the city's website. You're going to find a lot of successes in the report, and I'm just going to give you a couple that really struck me. One was that the Livonia Police Department's dispatchers responded to over 37,000 calls for service in 2021. And as you would guess, this number was up from last year. Livonia's fire and rescue average time in order to respond fell by 5 seconds. So we're 5 seconds faster getting to emergencies in the past year. Our web traffic to livonia.gov increased by over 40% in 2021. Obviously, a lot of that was driven by the pandemic, people tuning in to find out how they could get help and where resources were available at. And finally, more than 125,000 rounds of golf were played across the 3 golf courses in Livonia. So there are some fun facts, there are a lot of financial facts, and there are some facts that really help you to begin to understand the strength of this community. So I'm sure that as you have a chance to go through the report, as the community has a chance to go through the report, you're going to join me in that sense of pride that comes in accomplishing so much, and accomplishing so much in spite of a pandemic. Livonia services have remained strong, and I think you will find, along with the residents of Livonia, as I did, that that's clearly reflected in this report. So I proudly offer it to you tonight for your receive and file.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. President,
Mr. Barr.
just one question for the mayor. You said 125,000 rounds of golf. I'm wondering if you split out former council members from that, so we know.
They're their own separate category. We have data on all of that. Have a good evening, council.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we will now get to the listed agenda items for tonight. Items 1 through 5 are listed on what we call the consent agenda. They will be voted on as a single item. This does not mean that they are any less important or require any less attention, but rather that they were studied at the study meeting and they were found to be non-controversial and worthy of being voted on as one item. With that being said, can I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So move. So move.
Support.
Moved by Barr, seconded by McCullough. Anybody from the council? Well, I guess we don't, we'll call the vote. Ms. Nash.
You can ask for the audience.
Do we have any audience communication for the consent? We do not. Okay.
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. So those items listed 1 through 5 are approved as the consent agenda. Moving on with the agenda, we will go to item number 6. This is a report out from the Committee of the Whole. I chaired that meeting on January 5th of 2022. The purpose of the meeting was to discuss the various roles of the city council members sitting up here tonight in regards to items like who would be our parliamentarian and who would represent the city council on various boards and commissions outside of the city council, on different organizations in the community. So with that, can I have a motion? Excuse me, hold on a second. Can I have a motion for the city's delegate to SEMCOG, which I believe was Brandon McCullough? Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Support.
Okay. Any communication from the council? I should also note here that the alternate is also part of that same resolution, and the alternate will be Scott Morgan. Do you both accept that as part of your motion? Okay. Any communication from the council in regards to that? Any communication from the audience? Ms. Nash, can you call the vote on that?
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. Another item needing a vote is to designate Laura Toy as the council representative on the Livonia Anniversary Committee, also known as the SPREE Board, and to have Scott Morgan serve as the alternate on that board. Can I have a motion for that purpose?
So move.
Support McIntyre.
Okay. Any communication from the council? From the audience? Seeing none, Ms. Nash, can you take the vote?
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. Another item needing a vote to designate Kathleen McIntyre as the parliamentarian of the council.
So move.
Support.
Any council communication, audience communication? Seeing none, Ms. Nash, can you take the vote?
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. Okay, also needing a vote is to designate a council member to be the representative of the city council on the Board of Trustees of the Livonia Employee Retirement System. Kathleen McIntyre has been designated as such, is currently serving in that role, and we'd like that to continue. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Support.
Okay, any council communication, audience communication? Seeing none, Ms. Nash, can you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. All right. To designate a representative to the Hearts of Livonia Board, this has been determined to be Mr. Barr. Can I get a motion to that effect?
Mr.
Motion to
President.
approve.
Okay. Donovic, motion.
Second.
Mr. Morgan, second. Any council communication in regards to that? Audience communication? Seeing none, Ms. Nash, please take the vote.
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. All right, there's a lot of these, but we're almost there. Okay, to designate a representative of the city council on the city's tree committee. That has been determined to be Mr. McCullough. Can I get a motion to that effect?
So move.
Support.
Mr. Barr, Ms. McIntyre, any council communication, audience communication? Seeing none. Ms. Nash, can you take the vote?
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. To designate a representative for the Healthy Livonia Committee, which is a collaboration between the city, the Livonia Public Schools, and St. Mary's Mercy Hospital. The representative for this has been determined to be Mr. Barr, with Mr. Donovic serving as an alternate. Can I get a motion?
So move.
Mr. McCullough,
Second.
Mr. Morgan,
And you guys took too long on that.
Audience communication? None. Council? None. All right, Ms. Nash, please take the vote.
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. So to designate the city's representative to the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority, that will be our Finance Director, Michael Slater, with the alternate being Mr. Scott Barr. Can I get a motion to that effect?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan.
Support.
Mr. McCullough, supporting. Council communication, audience communication, seeing none. Ms. Nash, please take the vote.
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. And finally, to designate a council representative to the Bike Walk Livonia Advisory Committee. The designee to take that role is me, Jim Jolly. Can I get a motion to that effect?
So move.
Support.
Mr. Barr, Mr. Donovic supporting. Any council communication, audience communication? Seeing none from either. Ms. Nash, can you take the vote, please?
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donavick,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre,
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye. So that concludes number 6 in the report out of that committee of the whole meeting. I'll note that on that night, there were all the present members of council who are here tonight. Ms. Toy was unable to be there at that time. Ms. Nash was there, and also Mr. Testa, who's a representative of our zoning board of appeals. So with that, we'll go on to number 7 on the agenda. That is a waiver petition from the Planning Commission regarding petition 2021-10-02-22, submitted by Century 21 Row, requesting to construct and operate a vehicle tow yard by Accelerated Towing and Recovery at 34437 Rosati Avenue, located in the west, on the west side of Stark Road, just south of the CSX Railroad, in the southwest quarter of Section 28. Council, can I have a motion? Even if it's just for,
Mr. President,
yes.
I'll move approval for sake of discussion.
Support.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Support from Donovic. With that being said, I'll open it up to the council first. Do you have anything to start us with, Mr. Barr?
I suspect a lot of people here tonight are here for this item, so when I say move approval for sake of discussion, that's just, I think you sense the hesitancy up there. There's some questions. I have some questions we need to explore here yet tonight, but we need to get a motion on the table, so that's what that was. I do have some questions, but do we normally, I've only been here 6 years, I should know this. Do we normally give the petitioner a chance to come
can
speak
go
at
to
a regular,
petitioner
or do we
after.
not do that on a regular?
We can.
Okay, I guess if the petitioner could come out, maybe I'll
Let me
ask.
see if there's somebody else from council real quick.
Okay.
Just- Anybody else from council want to say anything before we get started? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Barr. With that being said, would the petitioner please approach the podium? As the petitioner, you are not limited in terms of how long you address the council on this item. Any audience communication for people who are not the petitioner in this matter is limited to 2 minutes per person, just to let you know. And with that being said, I'll go back to Mr. Barr.
Yeah, I do have a series of questions, sir. And by the way, can you just refresh me on what your name is?
If I could, with your permission, I've put together a bit of a handout that supports all the information I've said in the past, or I'm going to say
Feel
tonight.
free to hand that around, but
Okay.
for now, can you refresh me on what your name is?
My name is Terry Seaver.
Thanks, Terry.
Sorry
I
about
apologize for that.
And if you don't mind, I'll leave my mask on and spread this.
No,
around.
please just hand them to Mr. Zelinsik.
The guy in the black shirt.
Thank you.
I think I have enough for council.
So,
City attorney.
Mr. Seaver, and I apologize that I didn't remember, I just didn't have it right in front of me, and I want to make sure I addressed you
That's all right.
correctly. A few quick questions before I get to the meat of my questions. And some of these are just a review. They're things that were talked about a couple weeks ago, but I just want to make sure I'm clear on them. So first of all, from the hours perspective, what are we looking at? What are you expecting this business to be?
Hours of operation?
Yeah,
I believe he indicated this to the planning commission study session that they were planning, their normal hours would be open from like, their business is open 24 hours, but the location is gonna be open from like 9 to 5, 9 to 6.
Okay, and so when you say obviously you're a towing business, so when you say 24 hours, there could be vehicles coming in at any given time, right? But,
Yeah, I think they station out and they dispatch from their homes. So I'm referring to when the business at that location is going to be open. So the gate would be open, people would have access. They would close at 5, 6 o'clock, whatever it is at the end of the day, close up. So that operation would basically be closed. The only person might be there would be dispatch, but they're going to have normal business working hours.
okay, and the location on Grand River, we have the address for the location of Grand River, this business, that's the closest operation of this business
Yeah,
currently,
he
right?
has, he's located on Grand River, I think between Beach Daily and 7 Mile. And there they just have a building. They also have a location, they rent space from Tamaroff Buick over on Telegraph in Southfield. They have about 25 spaces.
And again, I know some of these things we talked about, but I'm doing this partly for
That's
me
fine.
and partly
No,
for
I don't
people,
mind. I
and
don't
partly
mind.
for people watching.
Yeah.
The intent of this business is to consolidate those?
Yes.
Or?
Yes.
So the Tamaroff and the Grand River one are going away?
Yes.
And they're all going to be consolidated
Yes.
here? Okay. Next question I have, how much are you investing in this property? Or
Me?
or
None, no.
Yeah, not
Me.
you, but the
Oh.
business owner.
The owner, he's probably gonna put close to $1 million into it.
Okay, and in the notes from, I believe it was from the planning commission, and I remember you saying this a couple weeks ago, what they said was, well, let me just ask you, how frequently are we gonna be seeing vehicles come into this business?
Well, he's not most of his service is from insurance companies and on call. He'd pick up most vehicles on site of where he's picking up. It's an accident. He would deliver them to wherever they requested. So most of the towing he does is to a collision shop, to a repair shop, or to some other facility. He does not do abandoned vehicles either.
Got it, you actually just saved me a couple follow-up questions with that. So, okay, so those were a few quick ones I wanted to get out of the way. So as I've reflected on this, studied this, talked to some people talked to a number of people over the last couple weeks, my main concern, and I will admit, while I'm very geographically aware this is, I will confess, I had not fully considered its proximity to, and in fact, not just proximity to, but it being located within the zone that is part of the whole mitigation cleanup that's from the old plant to
Yes,
the west of
Fort
there.
Morecambe, yes.
Yeah. And so I'm glad that was brought to my attention because that obviously raises a number of concerns. So, but my question for you is, why should we have confidence that there's no need, that there's no need to fear an increase in the contamination as a result of this business going there? I mean, obviously, there's
Well-
been a lot of work done there. From what I understand, it's going in the right direction. Now we're talking about, I know you said 2 to 5 vehicles per month, but it's, okay,
Excuse me, audience.
and let me, actually,
Bart, if you just give me a moment here. Listen, we're trying to have a decorum here for the meeting that's appropriate. Everybody will have a chance to vote, to speak their mind. It's rude and it's inappropriate to interfere with Mr. Barr or the petitioner at this point. Thank you.
That said, I will just say, that was part of the reason I asked some of the questions earlier. I wondered about that 2 to 5 vehicles per month as well. Understanding you saying that the majority of the vehicles you're towing are going to other locations, that actually does make sense to me. So I understand that.
And I think it's gonna be a revolving thing where they bring 4 or 5 a day. Some will set there, but nothing's gonna be there for more than 90 days or 120 days. Sometimes an accident will occur. They're stuck with a vehicle until the assessor comes from the insurance company, that type of thing. Or if it's a tow like occurred during the floods, has to come back and then be evaluated. But
So to what were you referring when you said 2 to 5 vehicles per month?
I thought you mentioned per day or something like that.
In the notes from the planning commission
Oh,
meeting,
okay,
you said
okay,
2 to 5
yeah.
vehicles per month. Was that now you're saying maybe 4 or 5 a day. I'm just trying,
No, I'm saying they pick up, they service, but most of them, 90% of them go directly to either collision shop or repair shop, or they're fixed on site. The ones that go there are going to be, I think the maximum that's allowed is 31 according to the recommation
31
of the
vehicles at a
planning
time?
commission, yeah.
Okay.
That includes employee parking, trucks and everything. So this is not going to be a junkyard. If he gets a settlement from insurance company, then they'll dispose of that. That'll go right to a recycling, whoever, or, the metal scrapping, that'll go right to a yard. It won't stay there.
What differentiates the vehicles that are coming to this property versus the ones that are taken to a collision shop or wherever?
I'm sorry, what was it?
What differentiates the vehicles that are coming to this property versus those that are being taken somewhere else?
Well, the service call will determine that. If you get a call in the middle of the night and there's an accident, they'll bring it back to the yard for a day, then they'll resolve where it should go, who's gonna service it, where it happens. If they get a breakdown, they'll go there, try to fix it. If not, it would go to a repair shop if it's during the day. So he works for an insurance company. He's not looking to accumulate vehicles.
So even the vehicles that come there are not typically sitting there for a long period of time?
No, they are not.
Okay. So back to the question that I asked earlier, the concern that's been expressed is you've got vehicles that have been in a collision or whatever that have been pulled in there, and the concern about fluids leaking from those why did I say videos? Must say that somewhere here.
I
From
could
those
have
vehicles.
the operator answer that question as well as any other ones you have with regard to the operation.
That'd
If
be
you would
great.
like
I was
to,
actually going to ask you why it wasn't up at the podium, so
Let him answer them. He has the technical answers to
that'd be
that.
great. Thanks.
Good evening.
I think we'll need your name and
State
address.
your name
Yeah.
and,
Go ahead.
state your name and address for the record,
Michael
please.
Fields, 14310, 21 and a half mile road, Marshall, Michigan.
Thank you.
So you heard my question, the concern being about vehicle fluids getting into the storm sewers, and then in an area that we're very sensitive to that, and not that we're not sensitive to that anywhere, but can you give us any degree of confidence that that will not happen?
Well, that absolutely will not happen because once a vehicle is in an accident, at the scene of the accident, we do all the cleanup right there at the scene. Once a car is involved in a collision, all the oil, antifreeze, refrigerant, whatever it is, we clean that up at the scene, and it's done, it's over with. If you break a radiator hose, it doesn't take days for the system to empty out. It empties out in a matter of hours, minutes, actually.
Okay. Will you, and I don't have the plans for the building up in front of me right now, but what's the feasibility of parking the vehicles that you bring in there indoors?
Only a special situation will require for a vehicle to be indoors. Most of the vehicles that come in, like Terry was saying, if it's an accident and it happens in the middle of the night, it's stored until the next day where it's determined where it's going to go, whether it be a body shop or a dealership or whether the owner comes and picks the vehicle up. We're not into the storing vehicle business. It's not profitable for us and it's not helpful for the consumer. The goal is to get the vehicle picked up and delivered as soon as possible.
Okay. And you're the owner of the site that's currently on Grand River?
Correct.
Okay. All right, that's the extent of my questions at this point. I'm sure there's some from my colleagues, but thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to do
Mr.
that.
Barr. Mr. Donovic?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks to petitioner and to your representative for being here tonight. Thanks to the residents. Received a lot of communication on this, so I do appreciate that. When you bought, or you're under contract for the property, was a phase 1 or phase 2 conducted on the property, the environmentals?
I don't know yet. I don't have knowledge of that.
I was hired originally by Mr. Rosati I'm a realtor, acted as the salesperson. I reviewed the documents. What happened was, I think it was on 2015 or 16, the DEQ had a lawsuit against Ford Motor Company for the contamination. And the contamination was in the groundwater, which is below our footings. Our footings are at like 4 feet. Everything's built above that. All of the reports that we're getting are that there is no serious health hazard with regard to the buildings that are in the industrial classification. Now, also it includes the subdivision that's south of us, and they have different issues, different parameters and whatnot. But when we signed off on the sale of the lots to another person, Ford Motor Company, the seller signed a release that where Ford Motor Company was still responsible for the contamination that's on record. The person who is responsible for the original contamination is always held responsible. But so far, we've met all the requirements. DEQ had a communication with the engineering department, and we're following their guidelines as far as building there. It's been a difficult site. Fortunately, it's an industrial site. If it wasn't, I'm sure there'd be other requirements. But because Ford Motor Company is documented, VAP program and all that, all the phase one was going to do is tell us the same thing that we already know. So phase one was not needed.
And that leads to my next comment is there anyone or any documentation supporting from the DEQ or Eagle or experts in the environmental field that say having a tow facility, a tow yard, is not going to add to the contamination? Because that's where my concern is.
Well,
One second, let me
yeah.
finish. It's not so much the issue of a tow yard. You're an industrial corridor. I think the location makes sense. Now, I'd prefer more trees to buffer between the brick wall and the trees behind the brick wall. I think that'd be a good faith effort from your client to the neighbors to mitigate any sort of noise or lights in the middle of the night. I think that'd be a very good faith effort moving forward to get this property across the finish line, so to speak. But my main concern is adding to the groundwater contamination, because that area has had tons of issues, and the residents in the area and the states and all the parties involved have done a good job, from my understanding, of trying to rectify the issue. But from my position, I don't want to add to that contamination. Now, I'm no
Absolutely.
expert, and I'm hoping that an expert could be provided to say, hey, this tow facility isn't going to add contamination or is going to add contamination. I think that'd make my decision a lot easier.
Well, I think that typically when a council approves a project, they refer it for engineering. And I think engineering would probably represent you with that regard, because it is going to be paved. So obviously, it's easier to keep cleaned up. Secondly, the water goes into the storm drain. It doesn't go into the ground. There's very little runoff is possible to go in there. The other thing is, this particular site was chosen because it's at the end of the cul-de-sac. It backs up the industrial on Belden Court, and it will abut on either side the industrial businesses that would be going in there. So in terms of a location, this seems like it would be the ideal thing. Now, I've read the reports regularly, the DEQ. I don't know if they supply them to the city or not, but when we first started selling these lots, I sent a letter, an email to Brandon Elger, who is the point person for Eagle. And he then communicated with the engineering department, the city, and gave us the go-ahead to build the first building. So we're now getting approved to build on 2 more lots. And eventually, they're all going to be built, and they're all going to be safe. They're going to probably have more protection than anything else built. They'll be less contaminated than any house in the subdivision. And I've read the papers, I've read all the documentation with regard to how this all started and went about. So I appreciate that you're raising that, but I think the regulation on it would come more from the city in terms of what they felt was needed in order to protect the storm drain.
Just from my perspective, I think you having some sort of documentation describing what sort of impact, whether negative or no negative impact from a tow facility would be beneficial, at least from my perspective. Having some sort of documentation showing that this tow facility is not going to add to the groundwater contamination or contaminate the ground
Yeah,
further.
well, I'm sure you have in your inspection processes that there are protection for that. And it's not just a towing yard, but anywhere that vehicles would be parked, anywhere that there would be this. I'm sure that your engineering department has those guidelines in terms of what has to be met in order to build a building there.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All set, Mr. Donovan?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair to the petitioner, kind of piggybacking on to Councilmember Donovic's, when you go through a site plan process, it's managing stormwater runoff. As for an environmental plan, I can assure you that there's no policing after the project is completed. And that, I think, is lying in my colleague's concern is what assurances does the city have after the C of O on what goes down that drain? And we don't, unless there was a violation and then we got, Eagle or the EPA involved. One question I do have is, we keep talking about a 90-day turnaround for these vehicles to be on site. What assurances does the city have and the residents and the neighbors? I mean, I appreciate that it's written down into the packet, but what assurances do we have that that is going to be true? There's a lot of tow yards that are out there spending a lot of time researching this, and you go out there and you got cars parked everywhere. And obviously, that you got Boston Post right directly in that neighborhood. I think there's a neighbor that abuts right up to the cul-de-sac. So that's a big concern for me, and I'm sure it's a big concern for a lot of the residents, is what assurances do they have?
Well, I've been around this area for over 50 years myself, and the city of Livonia has a very aggressive code enforcement. What would be documented is what's required, and you would have your code enforcement officers would be able to monitor that. The same as anything else, I'm sure there's regulations and stuff that govern this all the way along. There's probably more cars that are parked in a driveway and will have runoff into the streets that will affect the ground as opposed to this. Typically, because you're able to regulate it, you have more controls and more regulation on it. So I'm sure that they wouldn't be able to complete the building unless they met all the requirements, so.
And then the last question I do have is, I drove down the site and I noticed that it seems like this is a common building that you guys are developing. I think there was a couple on the north side of the road that look similar.
Yes.
What are those two businesses that are currently up? What are their operations?
I don't know what they are. The one that is furthest east, the first one you come to, I think that's more of a storage. Originally, it was some kind of a tech company or something. I don't know what they're doing.
All right.
Between those two is a vacant lot, and then the third lot building, I think has recently been renovated for a cannabis use.
Okay.
And I don't know any of the details other than what I found from doing my own research on that. There is a buildings and use restriction for the subdivision that was filed with original development back in 2006. And the idea is that it was to be built as an industrial park with similar or common frontages, and the aesthetics would keep, the developer would have the right to approve or deny the aesthetics, in that there's requirements for a certain type of brick, a split brick, certain size. That was the intent, and I think most of your same like any subdivision, there's requirements that have to be adhered to as far as the building requirements.
Thank you.
Mr. Morgan?
Yes, this is actually a question for the owner. Sure. Excuse me. Yes, sir. I have a question. Do you have any affiliation with any of those businesses that are either right on Stark there near Rosati or on Rosati Drive already?
No, we do not.
Okay. So, also, do you own any other property right on there?
No, we don't.
North of where you're building or south of that?
No.
Okay. All right. That's my only question for you,
All right.
sir. I do have a question for the city engineer. Excuse me. Mr. Zelonzik, I have a question as far as runoff. If there was any, do you see that there's any need for any type of sifting system if they have drainage into the storm that I'm assuming would probably be in that parking lot somewhere? Or
I
you-
think that would
The
be,
question was directed to the city engineer.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Do you see anything that would be needed in this case, since they're going to have vehicles parked there that may have some type of runoff from the vehicle or?
Through the chair, I would probably recommend it to the building department as far as what codes are recommended for the towing company in this day and age for the building codes. Obviously, we want to make sure that if there's a storm inlet out there, that there's either a water, oil separator, something that actually handles those contaminants to make sure that they're captured so they don't go into the storm line down further east to the detention pond. But again, it shouldn't be us noticing a spill. It should be the business owner making sure that there's like a grease trap into a restaurant to make sure that it's maintained on a daily basis, whatever. We want to make sure if there's antifreeze, oil, any of that stuff that gets in the storm sewer, it is collected and maintained and properly disposed of.
Okay, so that would be something that would be recommended by the building department, not the engineering department?
Correct. We deal with the right-of-way and easements. Again, that's going to be a storm system in the private area that probably would be dictated by the building code, but it may discharge out to the, depending on where it goes into the right-of-way, which is existing storm itself, that they would have to make sure they mitigate it prior to discharging into the right-of-way or into a public storm.
And we have no idea if that was recommended or not, and I didn't see anything in the paperwork or anything like that.
Typically, yes, that would be something that the petitioner would provide on the plans and/or be recommended during the review from the building inspection department.
All right, sir, thank you.
I believe Mr. Donovic wanted to say something else.
Thank you, Mr. President. So my earlier question, are you, the client, are you guys amenable to adding, if there's an approving motion, adding more trees and a buffer between that southern wall?
Well, yeah, I don't think that's a problem. The southern wall is going to be abutted by another development in the future. Typically, in that site, the one side has been a zero lot line and pavement parking is abutting the property line. It's the north side that gets, according to the requirement of the ordinance, gets the landscaping. But what I think the protection would come is when lot 7, I don't know if you have a picture in front of you, but the lot south, it's almost an acre lot. That would be the lot that would come under scrutiny in terms of screening for the rear yards and the setbacks. The fact that this backs up against another industrial parcel, if you've got yeah, you can use ours for aerial photograph. The parcel, the building that abuts us on the west is open parking lot, and they typically have 15 or 20 cars parked there regularly. I mean, they do renovations or something, but they typically have it. So that probably, although we could do whatever you felt would be in the best interest of the city, arborvitaes or something that would act as a screening. There has to be a fence. The fence is required. So I don't think they're objecting to that. And we want to state that we do understand that we have to build according to the city's inspection requirements and their own environmental requirements. Now, there are monitoring wells. When you ask, how would you know that it's not being additionally contaminated? All along the street, there are contaminating wells that Ford Motor Company on a regular basis goes through, pulls samples, and they post those eventually in an environmental report, which is, I think called Beacon Post VAP, Ford Motor VAP program. So those numbers have been well below what is required per millionth, whatever it is, you know what I mean, as far as the contamination. So it looks like it's improving. I think the hope is that eventually the groundwater is going to dissipate, and hopefully Ford Motor Company's been forced to stop the contamination and not add to it. But as far as the contamination of the ground that's existing, Ford Motor Company will forever be responsible for that till it's resolved.
Okay, thank you, sir. If there's nothing else from council, we'll go, we'll ask the petitioner, is there anything you'd like us to consider?
Yes,
since
I
you're-
would. I would like to make a little presentation. You know, the two study meetings, or the study meeting, the planning commission, and 2 meetings with you is giving us a chance to look at stuff, review stuff. I went back and I looked at the minutes. When the planning commission made the recommendation, I wasn't concerned about the requirements that we were going to be facing with regard to the site plan. When there was a question at our study session with you with regard to we're in for a waiver, which was a use waiver. But actually, because the city requires us to submit a site plan, you're having to consider the site plan as well. In that site plan, there is a requirement for a setback. And the recommendation from the planning commission was entirely all the approvals subject to were in relationship to site plan. So obviously, we're here for both reasons, the site plan and the use. Which brings me to when I had heard from the city that we did not comply with the ordinance. And I thought, well, you know, you've done a new ordinance, that's what cities do. And I was pretty confident that we would be grandfathered in. But that has not been particularly determined. So what I did was I copied about 1,000 different documents from the city, and I looked at public hearings on your zoning ordinance recommendation, and ultimately, it's a pretty nice piece of work, actually. You're looking for the future here, and it makes a lot of sense. However, I came across the discrepancy. And I just refer you to, this is the one page I had out of order, but I think in your packets, the last page, does it say public hearing minutes? Okay, look at the third page on that. This was the public hearing that was the beginning of the end for this project. And if you look at what I have marked there at the top, I think, it was the opening comments, I think, by Mark. And in that, it said there was going to be no change in the industrial classifications. So I went on to try to figure out what changed and why are we impacted with the new ordinance. So if you look at the documents here in the beginning now, I'm back to the beginning. One says new and one says old. Under the new zoning language, it indicates that basically, I think it's in the first paragraph, that the setback is 50 feet. Okay? In the old ordinance, which was indicated that the city did not intend to make a change and intended to leave it as it was, on the old ordinance, on page 2, and I think I have it highlighted, it says, and makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure you want to keep this, it says, a parcel with less than 1 acre and is on the interior of a industrial park, the setback is 60 feet. Actually, go to 6, I guess it's the third page, the way I put it together. 16.10. And on the third page of that, where it started with old, does everybody see that? It says industrial park, which this is a subsection to what the new ordinance is and got left out when this was produced and you voted on it. And it makes sense because if you're on the interior road of an industrial park, those roads are only 60 feet, and the requirement is to be 60 feet from the center line. That's what it says here. And it makes sense, and it needs to be in there anyway, and we're probably the only property that was affected by this because we're the only industrial park being built. However, if you have reconstruction or you have other issues, this needs to be in there to apply to that. Because what ended up doing is, what ended up happening was, we got our original plans approved for this development back in 2006, and that was under the language, under the subsection of an industrial park. So, in reference to this whole thing, what's happened is, started out that this was not to be changed, it was publicly noticed. It then got changed because what I believe is an inadvertent mistake that this language was not included. And I think probably, I don't know that it was anybody's fault necessarily, other than it just happened, whether it was a typo or whatever. But maybe it wasn't brought to anyone's attention until we submitted for our plans.
Thank you, sir. So, Mr. Toromina, I saw you're the expert in regards to this. Do you have any comments in regards to what the petitioner is saying?
I'll just say that Mr. Seaver is correct. It was an inadvertent omission as part of the adoption of the Livonia Vision 21 zoning ordinance. It's unfortunate because it not only affects this property, but it affects other industrial park lots. We fully intend to reintroduce that language as part of a package of other amendments to the Livonia Vision 21 zoning ordinance. However, that's not likely to occur for another several months. So in the meantime, after discussing this with the law department and the inspection department, it's unfortunate, but the only real course would be for him to either move the building or seek a variance from the zoning board of appeals.
Well, and I want to address that too, if I may.
Well, you've spoken quite a bit, and I appreciate the information that you're providing
I
here.
just have a couple more things to say with regard to the packet I gave you.
Okay.
5 more minutes probably.
Let's try and make it a little bit quicker than that, okay?
Okay. I gave you a copy of, it's titled Roles and Responsibilities Local Ordinance, and it's from the Michigan Municipal League that offers interpretations and stuff regarding how conducting a local. And down here on page 2, there's a paragraph that refers to requirements for notice. I would say that the city did not meet their constitutional requirement, a notice to us, because they didn't intend to do it in the first place. And then lastly, I gave you this overhead, which more specifically shows the layout. And I numbered some of these. The 3 buildings that are shown there already have been built with the setback at the original zoning classification. And it would be best if all of the buildings were the same and it was consistent. Also, the plans were submitted in 2006, and because of that, the owner went ahead and built the road that's there. He built the retention pond, and he made a commitment based on the approval from the city. So my feeling is that this project, with regard to zoning, should be grandfathered in.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I don't, my understanding at this point in time is that we don't have the ability to grandfather this in. If you'd like to seek that, you'd have to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Thank you
Yeah,
for bringing these
If
to
that's
our,
what your decision is, that's what we'll do.
I think that's under advice of counsel and the planning department. Thank you, sir. Ms. McIntyre, I believe you wanted to say something?
My point's moved at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to Mr. Barr, and then we'll go to audience communication.
I do think it's worth acknowledging the effort that Mr. Seaver went in to find that, and, I mean, nice work. And it sounds like there's some things that need to be cleaned up, but as the maker of the motion that's currently on the table, I'm comfortable with this going through the normal process, and I think the case that you made tonight is very, very relevant to Zoning Board of Appeals, and I think they'll be amenable to hearing that, so.
Okay, with that being said, we will go to audience communication. I presume that there are a lot of people here tonight that would like to address this matter. If you would come one at a time to the podium, I will ask you to start by stating your name and address. For sake of time, I'd ask you to try your best to avoid repetitive comments once they're made clearly and the council has heard them. So is there anybody here tonight who would like to address this item, the tow yard, during audience communication?
Do you want me to keep, how do you want to do this?
Okay, Ms. McIntyre is the parliamentarian, the newly official parliamentarian. So she will be keeping time from the audience comments. Each person who approaches the podium is limited to 2 minutes on the topic. Ms. McIntyre will cut you off at 2 minutes. We're not going to give you a warning, but you got a 2-minute. Go ahead.
My name is Bruce Tenniswood, 34921 Beacon Street. I had a presentation put together, but after hearing the narrative on the contamination issue, I'm just reminded of a commercial from a few years ago that said, "That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works." This whole thing on contamination makes me sad for this owner, because I think that he's bitten off a lot more than he can chew. I sent all of you a extensive, detailed email, and I hope you all received it, about the ramifications of this program, and I would urge you to vote no on it. I want you to know that this package that I have with me tonight is a report that is a quarterly report just from my yard. And this is a very, very explicit report on what's in the groundwater. This report is generated for every one of those wells that are put in, including the ones that are going to be affected by this development. And what we've heard tonight about rainwater, stormwater runoff not getting into the groundwater is absolutely not true. The stormwater runoff goes directly into the retention pond, which is in the aquifer that all of our houses are on. We've spent the last couple of years fighting to get this cleaned up, and we've done an amazing job. The numbers are down, and I can tell you that Alden Village is not going to stand for 1 ounce of an increase in the numbers. We're not going to stand for it. And I hope that this owner runs from this project, because they're being given bad information.
Not the time.
This cannot happen. We are not going to tolerate an increase. And with a wrecking yard, I'm sorry, but when you tow a wrecked vehicle, they leak. And leaked fluids get into the groundwater. Thank you for a no vote.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Name and address, please.
My name is Anthony Wallen. I'm 34920 Beacon Street, similar area. A lot has been said about the groundwater, so I wanted to bring up the concerns about the noise of this. A wrecking yard this close to a residential area obviously causes a lot of noise. With a 24/7 towing business, there'll be trucks, there'll be backup beeps, any number of noises. I know the addition of trees has been mentioned here as well, and that, you know, will work fairly well for 6 months out of the year, but for this time of the year, as all of us know in the neighborhood, all the noise from the train comes straight through, so it would only be a part of the time of the year would addition or help. I also know that it's a very quiet neighborhood, considering all the industry that's around it. It's a very pleasant neighborhood to be in, to walk around at night. spend time out on the porch. And just adding noise in the day or the night just decreases the value of that property and the experience in that. Zoning, I think, is very important to ensure that a property is used correctly and doesn't affect the surrounding properties negatively. And for those of us who are close, some like, I think with only a little more than 150 feet away, the noise from this definitely detracts from our residential experience in Livonia. So I would, request for that reason a vote no as well.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If you plan on making a comment, I would appreciate if you would line up over here so as to be expedient. Ma'am, state
Hi.
your name and address for the record, please.
It's Robin Burns, and my address is 34450 Capitol. And our backyard butts up right to Rosati Drive. On the other side of the wall is Rosati Drive, which the wall is actually falling down and crumbling. And we already have, not only, of course, the contamination concern, which gets my anxiety pretty high. We live kitty corner to the Mitten automotive place, and they make a lot of noise as it is. It's also a concern to me, like I've noticed like Stark Road, there's so many semis, there's already tow trucks, towing trucks on the other side of Stark down a little ways. It's just, to me, it's just unacceptable. Like, we need a break. And we just want to live in peace, because we've been through a lot. And so thank you for listening.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Monica O'Connor, 34965 Wadsworth. Just a couple things to expand on what Bruce said about the groundwater. I'm not sure what it's called, but where it gathers, the drain is higher than the ground. So the drain comes out, so the water will absorb into the ground before it goes down the sewer drain, from what I've seen from taking walks back there. Another thing to consider is there's a lot of undeveloped area in the back part, but that's zoned for housing. So there's future residents that will be there that will be even closer to this, and I think you should consider them. And then what Robin already said. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. Please state your name and your name and address for the record.
Teresa Gettner, 11608 Boston Post. And my concern, one thing we learned through this whole Ford Motor thing is vapor intrusion. And if something spills on the cement is porous. It will leak right down into the water. Don't think that's a barrier. And what happens is when it hits our basements, it turns into a vapor and comes right up in your house, and you breathe it in, and you can't smell it. And it's dangerous. It causes cancer and all kinds of diseases. If this continual dumping adds to what's already there, it puts us at higher end our babies. The babies and the children are especially at risk. It could put it right over the mark and increase the vapor intrusion level. And that's what scares me, because it's a silent killer for us. And that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, sir. State your name and address for the record.
George Usatella Jr., and speaking on behalf of my father, George Sr., who just recently passed right before Christmas, 11721 Boston Post. So I have two really quick stories. About 20 years ago, a friend of mine bought a house in Melvindale, needed a new furnace. I tried to convince her to put an air conditioner in at the time, and she said, no, I like the fresh air. Well, spring hit, she opened her windows and tried to single-handedly attack the glue factories and the oil refineries down there, who had been there a very long time. Well, this is kind of an opposite situation where all the village has been here a very long time. I grew up, I moved there in '76 when I was very young. So the second story brings me back to the mid-'80s when I was a young driver, spending time at junkyards with a friend fixing cars. And cars that have been in accidents, when they shift, fluids leak, and obviously things have been regulated, a lot of changes have happened, and I can see that being under control a lot more. but also regulation. The cannabis industry has a lot of regulation, yet every time I go to my father's house, all I smell is a cannabis cultivation facility there. So the noise pollution, the air pollution's minimal in this case. And then obviously the groundwater, which has been a huge impact on my friend. I don't live there currently. I will probably be selling the house, but these are my friends, and some of them I consider family. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sir. State your name and address for the record.
My name's Keith Lemon, 12101 Brewster. I just like to say in the mornings, I hear the trucks go by. I have a second-story bedroom, and I'm probably about 200 foot from a brick wall. And I hear the commotions of the trucks with the beep beeps and all that now waking me up in the morning, and I know what's coming with that. So I say vote no on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Jones.
Okay, I'm going to ask you again, if you have a comment or you plan to make a comment, please line up.
Mr. Jelly, while we're waiting for the, if I could just address something the petitioner just said, not the last one, I think it was Mr. Gattner. No, it was, I'm sorry, the man whose father had passed away. We don't have any ability, the state has taken away the community, cities, municipalities' ability to regulate the cannabis grow industry. So we understand the issue with the fumes, and just so you all understand, that is 100% out of our control and purview, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Laura Wilson, 12070 Boston Post Street. And we just bought our house about 2 years ago. We just got married, my husband and I, and we plan on having kids there and stuff like that. And this actually scares me, that the water and stuff could be contaminated and the noise and those type of things. So, you know, it's just a concern. And I hope you guys take that into consideration, because we love Livonia. And as you guys talked about Alice earlier, she was dear to my heart. And I want to be like her and live in Livonia forever. And I cherish that. So I just want you guys to take that into consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, sir. State your name and address, please.
My name is Henry Shires, 12091 Brewster. And that, what they want to present today does not fit into that park. This is a whole different scenario what they're trying to bring to you. This park is more offices, buildings, than a junkyard kind of environment. And please consider that and look at that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, this will be the last audience comment.
My name is Laura Harlan, 34965 Standish. I've lived in that neighborhood since I was 14, and because of all this, our family's already having a lot of health issues that are unexplainable, and we don't need any more scares in our neighborhood. So I'm just kind of adding to that. But I mean, even my granddaughter was born autistic, and it's from environmental reasons. So my arthritis, they can't explain it. So yeah, we're not for dirty businesses around us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for your comments tonight.
Mr. President, I just, 2 minutes to respond.
That'll be the last statement from petitioner. 2 minutes.
I have one more question for him after all that.
This park's gonna get developed. I don't know what's gonna end up meeting the requirements. There'll be a lot of uses that will probably be able to go to the review process and inspection process and get built and be there. There's probably more runoff from parking lot that's gonna do any contaminations. But I just would like to finish by saying this. I appreciate the residents. I feel for them. I've been over there for a couple years now doing stuff. I've talked to residents. But you have within your power, through the EPA, the DPA, the Eagle, and all that, to make this development have the cleanest runoff of any water in the city. there are regulations that they would need to follow. You can filter, do whatever you need to do, the water that runs off of this site. So I would say that this might be a better choice and use than anything else that's gonna go in there in the future. As far as the noise and the trucks and that, people have bought these lots, they're gonna build, and they're going to exercise their right to do that. So just, thank you very much.
If you want to stay there, Mr. Barr has one more question.
Yeah, just after hearing everything, you said earlier, and I don't remember your exact words, but I just written down, you had said something along the lines, we've met all the requirements of the DEQ or Eagle or whatever it's called. Can you, are you able to elaborate on that at all?
Well, actually, the city engineering and their conversation with DEQ was that there is a barrier that goes down the building, but that's done mostly to protect the inhabitants of the building. But if you read the monitoring wells and the reports that are done on a quarterly basis, they tell you what the per millionth is of a certain type of gas and all. And their determination has been not only this, but all the industrial in the area is not of concern as far as a health hazard with regard to the contamination per millions. It's different than what it is for a house in a subdivision where people are living there 24 hours a day. And it's all public record.
All right, thank you. I know we're getting close to voting on this. I
Yeah.
know I had put an approval down for discussion.
This is the owner of the property. He wants to just make one comment.
Okay, sir, Mr. Barr is speaking, and he's on the council. If you'd like to stand there, you can stand there, but don't interrupt him.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Mr. Barr?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think we've heard what we need to hear. Listen, I honestly have zero clue what my 5 colleagues up here are thinking right now. And I also just have to state that I can't, and he knows this, I can't understate my respect for Bruce Tenniswood. I mean, he and I have become friends over the last few years and had opportunity, and Bruce knows that, but everything that's been said, I hear it, and it's led to a lot of time spent looking into this. I am gonna stick with my approving, and the reason is, I do feel this is an industrially zoned property. And while I definitely understand the concerns that are expressed, which aren't unlike concerns that we often hear, in this case, this is, and to my knowledge, always has been, industrial zoned property. It's going to be industrial uses that go in that property, and it will be developed with industrial uses. I don't see this as inconsistent with that. I feel that, when we talk about things like noise and those kind of things, yeah, I understand where that's coming from, but again, I don't see that as inconsistent with what this property was zoned to be. And even just hearing the operations of this business, when we're talking, even if we're talking 4 vehicles coming in there a day and then going out the next day, that does not strike me as excessive for an industrial zoned property. The concern that I have, obviously, is on the environmental side. But having heard everything we heard tonight, and I am not an environmental expert on these matters, so I have to go on what I've heard. But among all the things we've heard, I'm satisfied that between what the business owner has said and with the regulations and all the things that are in place, I think this will be appropriately managed. And I absolutely understand the fears and concerns that people have, but I really, I'm satisfied that it'll be okay. I know there's people here that disagree with that. Maybe my colleagues disagree with me on that. We'll see when we vote, because I honestly had no idea where their head's at. But I did have approving on the table. I'm going to leave it there, and I wanted to explain the rationale for where I'm at. Thanks.
No, I have a question.
Ms. McIntyre?
Through the chair, I'm not sure if this goes to Mr. Bernier. Could a condition be added for additional environmental mitigation or barriers against any runoff? I think that's a question for
you could put in the additional, I don't know who would police it. I don't think the city is equipped to police it, and we don't have the equipment. I have to ask Mr. Hanna, but I don't believe we have the ability to police any of those pollutions that are going out into that, from that parking lot into the ground. When we were dealing with the Ford Motor Company, that was the state that did it, and it was the state's responsibility. You could put the condition in there, but it might be a condition without any teeth to it, because we can't make the state do anything.
Mr. Jelly? Understanding that, Mr. Bernier, what I'm really asking, actually, let me withdraw my question, and I would like to make a statement.
The floor is yours.
I am not going to support this, and if it fails, I'd like to offer a motion to put this into committee, and it may even be the Health and Safety Committee that I chair now. I've done a lot of diligence, a lot of work and research on this issue. As many of you know, I one time worked for Ford Motor Company. I'm very familiar with the situation, the transmission plant, and everything that came from that. To Mr. Barr's point, you do live adjacent to an industrial property that's always been zoned industrial. So uses where trucks come and go, and I don't disagree that there's a lot of truck traffic on Stark. That's one of the industrial corridors of the city, so you do have a lot of various kinds of truck traffic. I would like further discussion and education and opportunities to understand what could be done, and Mr. Bernier's point is well made about policing, but what systems are available proactively to keep any runoff from getting into the groundwater. And I mean, there's always runoff with any business and industrial zone, and the point was made that cement is porous. You still have a lot of runoff anytime you have any industrial activity. Cars parked, trucks coming and going, there's runoff. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. McIntyre. Mr. Donovic.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, I wanted to explain what I believe I'm going to be voting. First, I do like the plans. I do want this park to be developed. You are an industrial park, and it's going to be developed, and it'll be good for the city, and it's a beautifully located area. My concern still is about the environmental aspect of having a towing facility in a very sensitive area. Now, if it wasn't the sensitive area that it is, with all the efforts that have gone the last few years, I would be voting to support it. But tonight, I'm not going to support it. That's not a knock on the project. I think it's a beautiful project, and I think that it's a beautiful park that needs to be built up, and there's tons of vacancies there, and it's going to be one of the industrial corridors of our city that is one of the nicer new modern industrial corridors. But with environmental aspects of going on, the uncertainties, I'm just not convinced yet that enough action, mitigation efforts have been put into this to make sure that there isn't added contamination from the vehicles that be parked there. Again, these aren't brand-new vehicles. These are cars that are going to be smashed up. They are going to leak, and I have not been convinced that any kind of effort will be able to stop that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to touch base, I will also be voting no on this. Going into it and actually reviewing the packet, the hours of operation being 24 hours, the no guarantees on how many cars could be in and out, the fact of the stormwater runoff, that plays a part. We could go in there and say, hey, we want 6 oil water separators spread around every single catch basin. And that might make us feel really warm and fuzzy, but how do I know that those things aren't plugged up and the preventative maintenance are taking place? And a lot of things with environmentals are reactive. So we're not gonna know about it until you have that in your report, and then we're gonna try to figure out, what are we gonna do to fix this? And then we're already back behind the burner. I look at this and I go, would I want to live right behind this? And my answer is no. So I will be voting no tonight.
Okay. Okay, last word, petitioner, owner, state your name for the record.
Ron Emling, I'm the owner and developer over at Rosati Ave there, and our intentions were to put a nice class act type development over there. That's why we want all the buildings to kind of look alike, so one guy doesn't come in and build a one-story building and devalue the guy that just put $800,000 in his building. So the development is supposed to be, I don't know, upper end, if you will, for that area. It's a great little area. When I invested into it a year ago, I put our first building up there. I went well. We're doing a second one across the street from it. I want to address the audience first and let them know that I've taken in everything that they've said. To address the wall issue from the one lady, that's not my wall. The wall, I just spent $8,000 repairing the wall I'm responsible for that starts from lot number 2 all the way around to lot 12. So our wall has been maintained and fixed just months ago. So our wall is not the one that's crumbling and falling apart. She's gonna have to file some kind of petition with the city to get that owner to fix that wall. The second thing is with the leaching of the contamination. When I built the first building, they required a minimum, in the engineering department as well, required a minimum of 6 millimeter thick visqueen or some substance like, so no leaching can come out of the groundwater and no leaking can come through the floor or through the parking lot to kind of encapsulate everything and keep everything status quo. The drains are gonna catch any snow runoff or any water runoff at that point. We do have a drain in the inside of the building that's got a oil separator that was required from the engineering department as well. As far as addressing the noise, when I bought the development a year ago, it was full of trees. It was just old weed trees and cottonwood trees, just garbage trees. We took them down. The neighbors are now experiencing a lot more noise going through with the train. There's no blocking any of that noise anymore. That's gonna happen no matter what. Whoever buys it, if it were me or somebody else, they're gonna land clear it to develop the area. So we're in a situation where they're complaining about the noise. It's gonna happen. They knew when they moved into the area that someday someone's gonna develop that area. It's been sitting idle for 16 years. So when I bought it, I looked at all the environmental issues there. We took everything into consideration. We did our research. We had our attorneys look everything over, and they said we could move forward as long as the city said it was okay. So as long as the city gave us the blessing, we moved forward with the development. And I spent a lot of money on the development, and we're, land clearing it, fixing the wall, making it as nice as possible. And the development is going to be under a what is that? Well, we have a board, and it's going to be under the association. So there's only so much you can get away with each building and building owner. So you can't build nothing goofy. You can't do nothing goofy. There's a certain standard we're looking to get for each tenant that owns it. We sold 5 lots already. So when those individuals do end up building over there, they're going to be under the same scrutiny as everybody else. We're not building a shabby neighborhood. And I explained it to Mr. Fields here when he does his tow yard. You're not going to have a junkyard here. I've got $800,000 buildings going up all around you. You're not going to have a junkyard here. So he knows it. I don't know him from you. He just came in off wanting to build a building there and own a business there. So he's going to meet the same criteria as the city requires, and all those environmental issues will be addressed through engineering. I'm not going to bat for this guy. I'm just letting you know he's got to meet our standards as well.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
With that being said, Ms. Nash, please call the vote on the approving motion.
Councilmember Barr?
Aye.
Sorry. Councilmember Donovic?
No.
Councilmember Morgan?
No.
Councilmember McCullough?
No.
Councilmember McIntyre?
No.
President Jolly?
No. The motion fails. The waiver use request is denied. Ms. McIntyre, would you like to make a motion at this time?
I would like to make a motion to refer this item to, and I have to get exactly the name of my committee.
Health and safety.
Thank you.
Or no, public safety and health.
I'd like to refer this, thank you, to the Public Safety and Health Committee.
Support.
Okay. Any comments from the council? Any comments from the audience in regards to this item? If you'd like to make a comment, please come to the podium.
Again, my name is Bruce Tenniswood, 34921 Beacon, and I just want to extend my hand to anybody in this room that if you want to talk about anything to do with this situation, I've probably forgotten more about it than anybody else in this room. and I will do anything I can to help people.
Let-
We can cooperate, and I'm offering my help to anybody.
Okay, Mr. Tenniswood, I appreciate that. So let me state this right now. She's making a motion to put this into the committee of the whole. The purpose of a committee, I'm sorry, excuse me, Committee, Public Safety and Health Committee. The purpose of that is to further review and talk about what could be done on a site such as this that would be affected like this for all the concerns that were expressed here tonight. It's an opportunity for more discussion later on. We don't have to have a large discussion about having a discussion in the future, okay? Just to preface that. So I think ma'am, you were first.
Lisa Gettner again, 11608 Boston Post. For the health and safety, we have several people with scleroderma in our neighborhood, a very rare autoimmune disease. If you would like to look at that, my doctor at U of M said it's rare for 3 people in that neighborhood to have it. It's like there's 1 out of every 80,000 people have it in the US. So for 3 to be right in our little area, and he was asking, he keeps saying the city's gonna clean any contamination. You know what, Ford has spent like 30, 40 million, I don't know the exact, cleaning the do they have that kind of money to put the pumps in and have the state regulate it? It's, you know, it's not a little thing, it's a big deal. They have no idea. We went through years of this, meetings, experts, the court, the judges in the court, we've been through this, we've lived it. We have a lot of knowledge about what has to happen. They have no clue. It isn't the city engineer that's gonna clean up or monitor the neighborhood. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
yep.
I just want to comment with regard to the motion. I think it's a great idea. I think the city needs to be involved and know what's going on and make sure that actually make sure that the DEQ is keeping Ford Motor Company's feet to the fire with regard to how this goes in the future. So I've studied a lot. I've looked at it. I've had to make send some tough emails to get DEQ to act. So I think it's a great idea.
Okay, thank you, sir. Seeing no additional comments, Ms. Nash, take the vote on sending this to the Public Safety and Health Committee of the council.
Councilmember Barr.
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic.
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye, the motion carries. This will be an item in Ms. McIntyre's committee, and she will call it out when she deems appropriate. If anybody would like to leave, if you were only here for that item, you can leave now. I'm going to carry on with the agenda. Item number 8, a request to approve the salary and fringe benefit adjustments for the classification of fire chief and deputy fire chief. Coming to us here on the city council from the Civil Service Division for the period of December 1, 2021 through November 30th, 2024. It is,
Why don't you just wait one, because it's hard to hear. Yes, some.
Where's Chris Martin? No, he hates me.
okay, I'm going to note in regards to item number 8 that we have received a communication from the Human Resources Director dated January 17, 2022, in response to the inquiries made by the council at the study meeting on January 5th. This item has been received and will be placed on file. Can I get a motion to open the floor?
So moved.
Mr. Donovic, and that's a motion to do what, Mr. Donovic?
Approve discussion.
Support.
I'll take that as an approving motion made by Donovic, seconded by Mr. Barr. If there's no comments from the council, we'll go to the Human Resources Director and ex-director.
And the new director, I'd like to introduce to everyone Janine Leibel. She is the city's new Human Resources Director. This is our honorable council. She's had quite the day. Right, quite the day. As presented at the last study meeting, I am here to request approval of the salary and fringe benefit modifications for the classifications of fire chief and deputy fire chief, as we've done historically in the past when there's a contract that is approved and ratified by council. I will be happy to answer any questions you have regarding these changes, or any other questions you might have.
Any questions from the council? Any comments from the council? Seeing none?
Just one comment from the council. I have no problem with this, with the adjustments, the recommended adjustments. I would like to note that we have asked the administration repeatedly for the vehicle policy, and it's not germane to this, but it ties into all of our discussions of compensation. So that's, I know Ms. Thomas is here, as always, as our liaison back to the administration. So I'd just like that to be noted. We've asked for the detailed vehicle policy and also information on the stipends, what the amount of the stipends are. Thank you, Mr. Jolly.
Okay, any audience communication? Seeing none, Ms. Nash, please take the vote.
Councilmember Barr?
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic?
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan?
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough?
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre?
Aye.
President Jolly?
Aye. The motion passes. Item number 8 is approved. We'll move on to item number 9. A request to approve an increase in compensation for Director of Housing coming to us from the Livonia Housing Commission to align the compensation range as other housing directors in comparable communities. The council received communication from the Director of Governmental Affairs on January 10, forwarding the 2021-2022 wage rate schedule for the City of Livonia director salaries. With respect to this item, that item is received and placed on file. Can I get a motion from the council? Mr. McCullough?
I'll offer approving.
Support.
Is that support from Barr? Okay, if there are no initial comments from the council, we'll go to Ms. McIntyre. Go ahead.
I appreciate the salary surveys. They're an imperfect tool, but I know that they're the best that we have. The difficulty I have is it is impossible without making it someone's full-time job, or at least sometimes their full-time job, to understand what the comparable, or the communities that we compare ourselves to, what those positions include. And at the time that the mayor restructured the office, restructured her staff and broke apart the responsibilities that had previously been with the Director of Community Resources, and those were partitioned out to the Director of Parks and Recreation and also to the Housing Director. And yet, it took us a year to address the Housing Director's additional responsibilities. And in looking at this, I mean, I'm 100% support an increase. But the grouping of the bands that we seem to have, that we have, and I don't know how if we have a formal term for referring to those, but we have, and now I gotta go back to that other page, so I get it right. I'm sorry, now my page disappeared. Anyway, we have the Director of, Denise, can you help me out here? And I'm sorry, I've gotta get back to my right page, which I've now somehow lost. Here we go. Yeah, this is, thank you. I was looking for it online. Paper sometimes is the best. We have bands of the Director of Finance, Parks and Recreation, and Economic Development and Planning Director and Public Works all in what I'd call a band, right?
Correct.
Of same department head salaries. And then we have another band where we have Information Systems Director, Human Resources Director, and then we have, so we have all these different bands. Is that, what do we refer to those as? Schedules? I mean, I don't think I've ever really asked or been part of a discussion where we determine how these different bands are created.
We simply grouped them that way for the council, so you could see
Right.
which positions are close or the same in pay. I don't believe there was any plan to, for instance, say that the director of finance should be paid the same as the superintendent of Parks and Rec. The salaries were created for each position based on not, the information at that time. And then as other positions came along, or we hired other people, or the positions grew, we then found, if you will, positions of like responsibility, that's the best way I can explain it, is just the amount of responsibility, the size of the department, so on and so forth, the budget, so many different factors that go into that. I don't think it was purposefully set out to have these bands, but it makes more sense to have specific salary levels and then figure out when you hire people, what salary level they may, or when you create a new classification, what salary level they would fall into.
Well, I thank you. That's very, very helpful, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask the question. And one more comment, if I may, please. And I'll just reiterate, and I understand how the process that Human Resources and the Civil Service Commission goes through, right, in looking at these salaries and doing the work, and I appreciate that. It also is triggered by the administration, and I am disappointed that an adjustment was made for one director immediately who took on significant responsibilities with that reorganization, when it took over a year to look at an adjustment for the other director who took on another significant share of that. But I'm very supportive of this increase. And thank you again for answering those questions. They're very, very helpful.
Any additional comments or questions from the council? I see none. Any audience communication in regards to this item? I see none. Ms. Nash, please call the vote.
Councilmember Barr.
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic.
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye, the motion carries. Item number 9 is approved.
May I just say one final comment, since the vote's over, not relative to the vote? Just on a personal note, I'd really like to, again, thank Denise, and this has been like the longest farewell
The
tour.
longest
but
goodbye.
You're like Elton John, the last tour ever, right? And then you're back on tour in residence or something.
We're trying to keep her.
Yeah, but, and we've said all things about how we hate to see you go. It is lovely to see Ms. Leibel here, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of knowing Ms. Leibel in a professional capacity through the chamber, and we have managed to find someone, right, who's going to allow us to have an excellent transition. You'll be missed, Denise. And I know from being with Ms. Leibel this morning for a very long pension board, baptism by fire, but, congratulations to everyone involved in finding someone who's outstanding and will be able to have that kind of seamless transition, so. Thank you.
And through the chair,
For the indulgence.
I just knew that Councilmember Barr would not believe me unless I brought Janine with me. And who could blame him? Who could blame him? But I thank you all. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with all of you. It really has.
Sounds familiar.
It's real this time. It's real. See why I have to hide in the fourth office?
Thank you very much.
Thank
you both.
you.
Welcome.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
All right, item number 10, the request to consider naming the dog park at Bicentennial Park as Super's Dog Park, coming to us here on the council from the Department of Parks and Recreation in honor of Super Chelani. Can I get a motion to open the item?
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovic?
I'd like to offer an approving.
I'll support.
Approving offered by Donovic, support offered by McCullough. If there's no questions from the council, we'll go to Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Council President Jolly. Ted Davis, representing Parks and Recreation. We're here talking about the proposed naming of the Bicentennial Dog Park to Super's Dog Park in honor of Super Chelani and all the work that the Chelani family and their foundation has done for the city of Livonia. Again, we had talked about the last meeting, the contributions not only Tom Chelani has made, but of course his father, and the namesake play area that is adjacent to the dog park. We feel this is a fitting tribute to the family. And I humbly request that council concur with the Parks and Recreation Commission in the naming of this amenity. I'm happy to answer any questions council might have.
Ms. McIntyre?
I don't have any objections per se to naming it for Super Jelani, but I will say I would have liked to have seen this park named for Dennis Wright, so, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Mr. Barr?
I'm not going to belabor this too much. I won't be supporting this, and it's not, and I'll just briefly explain why. It definitely meets all the criteria. We talked about that last time as far as our guidelines for naming. Certainly greatly appreciative for what Mr. Chalani has done and continues to do, and hopefully will continue to have an interest in the future in our community. It just seems, naming this park where he had no personal connection, where his dog had no personal connection. I understand the reasoning, and it's not wrong to vote for this. It just seems odd, and I've bounced it off of a few people, and they kind of throughout the community, and they kind of had a similar reaction. I would just say again, with great appreciation for what he has done in our community. If this were him coming saying, "Hey, I'd like to," and I'm just making this up, but I'd like to create a little seating area around the dog park, with some nice little landscaping and some benches and a tribute to Super Shalani, I'd be all about that. But for here, where he's put a lot of money into a park that's named after his dad, and obviously that's fitting, and we're appreciative of that, but then to just pick this, it just seems odd to me. So I'm not losing sleep over it. Super's dog park even has a nice ring to it, but that's why I'll be voting no.
Seeing nothing else from the council, any audience communication? I see none. Ms. Nash, please take the vote.
Councilmember Barr.
No.
Councilmember Donovic.
Yes.
Councilmember Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough.
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre.
No.
President Jolly.
Aye. The motion carries. The item is approved as requested.
Thank you, council.
Thank you very much. With that being said, any closing comments for the regular from the council? I see none. Any audience communication? If there is audience communication, come on up to the podium. No, this is anything that was not addressed on the agenda. Okay, come on up. Ma'am, you are first. Please state your name and address for the record.
Alyssa Horszewski, I'm representing St. Priscilla. I was told this meeting started at 8.
Listen, we are experiencing this with you. We're going to start that meeting in a couple minutes, okay? Maybe about 10, 15 minutes.
Okay, I thought it
I'm
was.
sorry for the wait.
Sorry, no problem.
Yes, ma'am, state your name and address for the record.
Karen Billings, 3031 Brighton, Livonia, obviously. The reason why I'm here, I've made several gosh dang calls, beyond the limit of anybody probably, to city inspectors, our Livonia mayor's office and everything else. We have a serious problem in this city with littering, a serious problem. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, can you
yes.
pull that microphone down closer?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
So, no matter what I do, I always seem to be bumping into walls trying to get something done in this city about cleaning it up. Everywhere you go, just on our freeways, I don't care if it's a storefront, every store owner is supposed to be responsible in this city for cleaning up their own property. Nobody is doing it. I live right behind a Walmart or whatnot that I can't tell you how many countless times, I get a group together, at least during the summer and spring and stuff like that. We're like 7 of us would go out one week, we go out for a couple hours and we clean up a certain area of our community. And you can go back there a week later and it looks like it's not even touched. Who's gonna start making these people responsible for picking up the community? Because all I'm seeing is bags flying in trees where squirrels are supposed to nurse. You got goose, being at the flying retention ponds, their little gooselings are getting stuck in plastic bags and everything else. All this litter, all this debris is going into our drinking water. It's ruining nature. It's ruining the nature, period. You got animals out there. We got people drinking water. So, you know, as many suggestions as I put in, like why can't they put more trash containers out near like Walmart or even out on the street that people can use them? Why aren't people out there, you know,
That's 2
picking
minutes, Mr.
up
Chair.
anything from, what do you call it, the probation department, things like that? We have, you know, Livonia has their own cable station. They could be putting something out on that to make people aware of that we have a problem and something needs to be done. Littering signs, there's a billion things that we can do and nothing is being done. This, gosh dang it, this neighborhood, our city nowadays, looks like a ghetto at the very least. So I'm just trying to figure out what's gonna be done to address this problem. I don't know where to turn anymore. I have spoken to everybody right on up to the White House, believe it or not. I have left messages, because it's not just our community. It's going on everywhere, but we have to start here. How can we, you know, just like the problem these guys are talking about with the runoff and everything else.
Okay, ma'am.
We can't even start with cleaning up our own backyard with litter.
With all due respect, you have hit your
Sure.
3 minutes. Thank you for bringing this item to our attention. The mayor's liaison is here tonight, and she will carry this through to the administration. I believe we have a question from Mr. Bernier, our city attorney.
I do, on a completely unrelated, we want to make sure we're all on the same page dealing with the motion that Councilmember McIntyre made. The issue on the referral to the Public Safety and Health Committee is to discuss similar issues dealing with contaminants and potential environmental problems, and is not on the particular development as such. That was the way I understood that it's on an overall,
I guess I would like to put it on that entire development.
okay.
I'm not sure how we do that.
So it's not on this particular item that was in front of the council today, but dealing with similar issues that were in front of the council?
Originally, I mean, it was my intent to put it on for this particular business, but my intent was to put it for this particular business, because of what this business is, because it's a tow yard. So in other words, looking into, I'd like to understand more about the economic, or more about the environmental impact of tow yards in particular.
So, if I may, Mr. Chairman, so the petition itself is the matter that has been referred to.
That was my intent.
Committee.
Okay.
Makes a difference how the final
Yeah,
motion
that was my intent, and I forget who seconded that.
It was Rob Donovic.
Was it, did you understand my intent?
Okay.
So-
Does that create a,
Well, the only question I had is whether on a matter that has been denied by council, if it could be referred to a committee.
Mr. Chair.
That's why I asked the
well,
question.
and that's what I wondered. That's what I wasn't sure, but when I was allowed to proceed with my motion, I assumed.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I guess I understood the motion differently.
So, Mr. Bernier, as Mr. Barr has just expressed to me, the motion was not actually a denial. The approving motion failed.
Okay.
And if I can add my
That's what
2
I-
cents here in regards to Ms. McIntyre, the way I interpreted it was that potentially there would be similar arguments made against any individual plot developments on that larger development site, so that there might be some kind of remediation efforts that we could look into for the parcel as a whole. But if that's, whatever her intention was.
My intent was, and I tried to express that up front, right, that if, and I think I intended to use the language, if it was not approved, that then I would like to refer that item into committee, that specific petition into committee.
Okay, I was unsure, and rather than try to figure it out later, I thought I would ask the question now to make sure I understood the council's feelings.
Thank you. Okay. Sir, your name and address for the record, please?
Christopher Martin, Livonia. Are we still in audience communication right now?
I believe we are, yes.
Okay, I was hoping. just want to make a comment here. Boy, this speaker is very loud. When I watch these meetings, many times, the acoustics are great here, but at times when you view these, some of you cannot be heard because you don't have your microphone in front. And I'd like to just mention that to you. So in future, because nobody wants to miss a thing that is said here. So it's that important. So thanks again.
Thank you, sir. If there is no other audience communication, I believe I can safely show 6.
You have to ask. We need a
Can I,
motion.
can I have a motion to close the meeting, please?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Give Barr the motion and McIntyre the second. Ms. Nash, call the vote, please.
Councilmember Barr,
Aye.
Councilmember Donovic,
Aye.
Councilmember Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember McCullough,
Aye.
Councilmember McIntyre.
Aye.
President Jolly.
Aye, the meeting is adjourned. We'll be back here in 10 minutes for the study meeting.